Welcome to Baxter Library. For some of you that said you haven't been in here before, welcome. This evening I'd like to introduce Peter Michael Talbot. I believe some of you know him. So, to get started, deep within the snowy evergreen forests of northern New England, Peter Michael Talbot is writing. He's writing parabolic spiritual thrillers that will make you think. You'll assume you know who the villain is, but it's never that easy, now is it? So welcome here.
Thank you. All right, so I don't know what I'm doing, so but thank you for coming. It's funny. I wish the students would have been here so I could razz them a little bit, but it was last year. Well, it's actually been since I started teaching at Living Waters. I had been telling of this story, and for high school, I had written a short story called Copperline. I love James Taylor. So he has this song called Copperline, and everything's perfect, everything's beautiful. And so I thought, man, what if it wasn't? What if it wasn't beautiful? What if it wasn't perfect? And so I started writing this story, short story for an assignment in high school, and everybody loved it. My teacher loved it, and it was a short story, but it didn't have a main character, didn't have a hero, it just had a villain. And there was the villain didn't even have a name. He was the villain, and the mayor. And so I kept talking to my students about it more and more, and they loved the idea. And so finally they said, and you have to just write it. And so Christmas break last year, I just started, and it just came out. And then I found something that I fell in love with, and now, due to my baby being nocturnal, I started my 4th manuscript just the other morning at 3 o'clock. So something I really enjoy. So if you don't mind, I'm going to share the first chapter with you and maybe talk about it a little bit more after that. Plus, I definitely want to leave you with the blurb from another book that will be released pretty soon. So, as well as the sequel, because some of you have read this and you know how it ends, and you're like, this needs to be out right now, so it will be out soon. So, Copperline. I speak all the time, but I'm so nervous. And just people that I know, thank you so much for coming. I'm in so much trouble. Dead. If they find me this time, they'll kill me. They're going to rip me limb from limb. I was running. I cursed with every step. I questioned myself. Should I have stayed? This better be worth it. I have to make this time count. With every knee-jarring lunge, I gasped for more air. I escaped from the specimen dormitory, and I was running like hell. And I remembered the last time I tried this, I didn't get nearly as far as I did today. The guards threatened to kill me if I tried this stunt again. I just couldn't be contained in that prison one more day. I won't. I dashed past several buildings, through only back alleys. I had to get to the tree line that surrounds the city. I heard the stories and the rumors by other specs, just like me, going to a spot in the forest line where they could hide, where I could hide. There had been dozens that have tried to escape. Some were caught and returned, but others never made it back. They probably killed them, like they're going to kill me. I kept sprinting, cautiously turning my head back to see if the guards were closing in. I did my best to move quickly on stagnant legs. On a cloth, a friend drew me a map A friend drew a map for me to make it out of the downtown sector. None of this looked familiar. I held my makeshift map tightly in my hand, examining it every few minutes. The hospital located almost in the middle of the city. They grew a row of trees almost around the entire city, just in front of the wall. The faux trees was my desired destination. I saw a handful of people, but none of them looked familiar. I watched as their eyes widened with curiosity as a man in a brown hospital gown moved past them frantically. I couldn't see the guards behind me, but I knew Copperline's finest would be on my trail like a pack of bloodhounds. Trees, I think I made it. There was mention of a creek just beyond the tree line. The concrete buildings and the pavement would soon turn into red pines and mossy ground. Just one more jump to freedom. I'll buy time until I can figure out my way out of this godforsaken city. I had to find shelter to hide from them, to take a night to camp out. The next day I'd wait for a delivery truck that comes once a week, and I'd jump in the back of the trailer. That 53-foot trailer would have to be my home for the few hundred miles. That was my best plan I could come up with, and this was my only plan. I've read books of people living like vagabonds, going from city to city at the mercy of various forms of transportation. That sounded amazing compared to what I've had to live through in the spec dorm. I was hell-bent on not taking one more syringe of poison that they would fill our veins with. Once I got to the forest entrance, I looked and I noticed the creek ahead of me. I aimed my body and jumped with everything I had. I used my momentum to project my entire frame forward. I cleared the creek with 1.5 feet to spare, but I dropped my napkin in the stream. The mossy covering felt cool and damp under my fingers as I landed and rolled forward. I quickly surveyed the area to determine where I should hide, but the covering was few and far between. Come on, think, Speck, think. Where can I go that they won't see me? I saw a tree that had been knocked down and the roots hanging high in the air. There, I thought. I could hide there, and at least the guards would give up and head back. But I knew that they wouldn't be satisfied knowing that I was somewhere out here in the woods. So they'd undoubtedly search again tomorrow with more guards, of course. I was probably naive, but I had to find a spot for tonight and move accordingly. 2 more leaps forward and I would be in the clear. I took one more look back, but I didn't see or hear anybody. I must have outrun them, I figured. The guards are restrained within the city walls, and I imagine the only exercise they got was from walking their dogs. No, the dogs. How could I be so stupid? How could I forget about the dogs? They'll surely catch my scent if they find me. I took off my outer clothes and threw them in the creek, and I knew that they would give off my scent. I had to get rid of them. I started dry heaving as the anxiety running through my body was making me sick. I bent over and started coughing up mucus, and I spit some vomit out of my mouth as I continued to retch with my hands on my knees. I felt my back arch up as my chest and my stomach violently contracted, trying to force me to puke. And out of the corner of my eyes, I spotted a muddy moss patch. I figured that if I was going to survive against the dogs, my only hope is to mask my scent. So I began to roll around in the mud like I was some possessed pig man. As I covered myself with the muck and the mire, I noticed a flash of bright white coming from the base of the knocked over tree. I didn't realize how far I had moved past my safe haven in an effort to mask my scent. Catching myself staring at the tree, I realized I didn't have enough time for a game of I Spy. I frantically continued to pad myself with the musky smell of fresh earth. Speck, Speck. I heard the loud, throaty voice of the guard. They caught up to me. I wondered how long the guard had been there watching me, and for a slight moment, we made eye contact. I could see his perfectly formed frown, and he slowly shook his head. He casually moved 1 foot in front of the other as he was trying not to spook me with any sudden movements. I had nowhere to go. I had no knowledge of this city outside of the walls of the spec dorm. I'm dead, I thought to myself again. Then a terrifying noise chilled me to the core, the sound of barking dogs. I looked to my left, but I didn't see them yet. Shaking with rage, I screamed, I'm not going back. I'm not going to be tortured anymore. I just stood there in my underwear, which was now soaked in mud and moss. Come on, move, Speck. My indecisiveness was like quicksand, paralyzing me. Just calm down, kid. You're better with us alive than dead out here in the woods, Officer X-128 shouted. He was a large and terrible man, just slightly older than myself. Now closing in on 50 meters, he could see clearly who I was. I recognized his dark skin and his muscular build. I was well acquainted with X-128. The youngest of the guards, a lot of the specs only referred to him as X. And he was also a spec at one time, but he was chosen to become a guard. Why him? He's going to murder me. There's no way out. My heart was pounding out of my chest, but not all from the adrenaline and the hype of the chase. I was angry at myself. I told myself that morning that this would be the day that I would escape and taste sweet, sweet freedom. My dorm mates told me I was insane for trying, and I couldn't take one more day of those vaccine trials. Call it intuition, call it a gut feeling, but today was my day. Why can't I move? Where do I go? I was indignant with my immobility. Specs over here, X-128 motioned to his other officers. One of the officers was holding back 2 leashed canines that looked like they were ready to have me for lunch. It's not going anywhere, he laughed, trying to intimidate me. It. The guards always referred to us as it, making us feel like animals. Hearing those words deflated me. I was running out of hope. I was questioning whether or not I could really escape. Should I give up? No, come on, Spec, move, move. Give it up, kid, you're pathetic. I told you that you'll die out here in the woods. And if the woods don't kill you, I will. I'm sure that the mayor isn't going to miss one more ignorant Spec, sneered X-128. He was the worst. When the guards catch you, they make you pay for trying to escape, especially X, who had perfected the art of torture. I looked around me once more. I was running out of time and options, and then I saw it again, a flash of white coming from the base of the trees. Is it a flag? A shirt? I think someone's over there. X took another step toward me, ranting and cursing as he trudged forward through the brush. But I couldn't make out what he was saying as I was much too curious as what I was witnessing at the tree. And then clearly I saw a hand stretching through the roots was motioning me to come toward the tree that was between X and I. Who is that? Is that a friend? Could that be a foe? I didn't have many options. Either I go back with X to be tortured or risk by following an unidentified person waving from the base of an overturned tree. I didn't have time to mull this over in my head. A spark of hope was ignited. I'm not going back to the hospital. Too many failed escape plans only led to serious beatings and extra doses of truth serum that cluttered my past. I had enough. I knew that the guards couldn't see the arm motioning me as the tree was splitting the distance between us. I heard a twig snap under X's boot, and the sound somehow amplified in my head. It was like a gun had been shot off at the starting line of a marathon. I jolted into a sprint. As soon as I started running for the tree, a certain fear fell upon X's face. He looked at the tree and then at me. It was almost as if he knew that I had found my way out. He's been here before, hasn't he? Run, Spec, run. As he moved faster, X struggled over downed limbs and brush. Dogs, release the dogs, he yelled. The officer holding the dogs released them on X's command. It seemed like they were moving at warp speed, and I was caught in slow motion. No, 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 run. Pain filled my lungs again. All the running and all the anxiety was getting to me. The dogs flew over the obstacles, eating up the ground and swallowing the distance between us, running, tripping over my own feet, trying to keep my balance, barking and moving ever so swiftly through the woods. The dogs were so fast, too fast. I started to mutter as I ran, no, no, no. Panic sent chills all over my body as I ran. My legs burned as I ran through the painful cramps, and my heart pounded in my chest. The phlegm in my mouth tasted metallic as I spit to the ground, and the sweat from my brow stung my eyes. And I think I'm going to leave you right there. Thank you. So it's about halfway through the first chapter. I didn't realize, how long the chapter was just going on and on. But I'll leave you right there because he's constantly, my main character, which, I don't want to give anything away, but he refers to himself as the Spec. And you'll learn why that he does that. But he's in this constant battle of finding out who he is and finding where he is, and not only in city, but in the city that he lives, which is a walled city. But he's trying to find his, who he is in this world, which I think is, honestly, I started writing this because I feel that it's a valid question to each and every one of us. Who am I? What can I offer to the world? And how do I overtake an evil villain? So again, I don't really know what to do next. So I'm sure that if you haven't read it, you probably have a ton of questions. But if you have read it, if you don't have any spoilers, or if you have any questions at all, or I don't know, how are you? Yeah.
When's your next book?
Well, it's funny that you say that. So the sequel to this, it ends abruptly. And so you're going to read it, and you're going to get to the end, and it's not really the end. It was actually the middle of the story. The publisher that I was working with recommended that we cut it right there. And because it was my first one, he just thought it would be an incredible idea to just build up the excitement of what happens, what happens next, Talbot? What is happening? And since then, a lot of you have messaged me, what happens next? And so, and a couple, I work with a couple editors in here, and so they know what happens, and I think like some of you have been trying to talk to them about what comes next. So the publisher thought it would be a really good idea. The first book is 65,000 words. The next one's about 70. And so that's a sequel to it. And so it was just part 2. But I did want to read you a blurb to my next book, which is a standalone book, which I wanted to talk about that a little bit because I'm super excited about that as well. It's called Debarkation, and my wife and I went on a cruise not too long ago, about a year ago. And of course, my mind runs, and I thought, and we were sitting down having breakfast, lunch, or dinner, or who knows, because it was a buffet and there's always food everywhere at all times. And I remember saying to herself and asking her, what if this happened? Or what if this catastrophe happened? Or what would happen if like this happened? And then I started looking up on the ship's terrible Wi-Fi and thinking, I want to look, there must be some other melee that has happened with cruise ships. And so Debarkation is a story of everything that can go wrong on a cruise ship. It does go wrong on a cruise ship. And so I'm going to read you that blurb. It's literally, the first copy should be in my mailbox tomorrow morning as an advanced reader's copy. So I'm really excited about that one. But I'm going to read you that blurb to Debarkation right now as well to try to whet your appetite for that, which will be out soon. Hello, I'm Samantha. I live a non-extravagant life as a 5th grade teacher in Pittsfield, Massachusetts. I'm single now after my lousy excuse for a boyfriend broke up with me after 4 years. The most exciting thing in my life is my best friend Rachel. Her and I agreed the best distraction I needed was to skip Christmas and board the maiden voyage of the world's largest cruise ship, the Tranquility. Things were great, magical really. That wasn't until the terrorists took control of the vacation and several hundred people were killed in the takeover. Some passengers tried to fight back, but ended up becoming an ornamental example of why we should have never intervened with the cartel. What once was a floating oasis has now become our casket somewhere adrift in the South Pacific. Again, I'm Samantha Wright, and this is my story. By the way, I should also mention I'm just a little schizophrenic. So, that will be out soon. So, are there any more questions or? Yes.
So, as I understand it, you started getting the writing bug when you were in high school. You're 35-ish.
Ish.
Let's
Let's go with that.
You teach at school, you lead worship. How has this journey been? I mean, how have you done it? And how exciting has it been?
It's very exciting, but it means that I don't sleep. So, but having a newborn, it's kind of convenient anyway. So, no, it's been very exciting. I love creativity. Ever since I was in high school, just finding different ways to be creative, whether writing music, which I love, and but then all of a sudden there was this huge gap in my life of where high school, where I started Copperline, and it was nothing like this. And I started that, and I thought, I just needed a good grade. And I got a decent grade. It was one of my few decent grades. and I really did enjoy it. But then there was this long gap of not doing any writing ever because I thought it would be cool to write a book or to write a novel, but I'm never going to do that. And then finally, with my students saying, "You've got to write this. You've got to do this." I think it first started with one of my past students, Adam Harrington, who would just tower over me, 6'4", and would threaten me to, that I had to write it. So, but it's been very exciting, and I've found that it has been a way for me to be creative in ways that I never expected, and it's been. I have a lot of questions. I've always had a lot of questions. I've always been a really spiritual person, but I've had a lot of questions, and so the writing process has had me kind of ask myself those forbidden questions that maybe I was afraid to ask before, about spirituality and about who I am and about who we are in general and what all this is. And so it's been very exciting. So, yes, ma'am.
As a first-time published author, is there anything that you take from your experience that you would give as advice to someone who has that as a dream?
Yeah, I would slow down and enjoy the process and realize that your next book doesn't have to be out in 5 minutes, and that you don't need to push your editors. No, but seriously, I heard a story of an athlete. I can't remember who it was, but he talked about how he went through a slump, a massive slump, and didn't know how to come back, and was stressed about the process and wanted to speed up the process because as you're a professional athlete, you have people expecting great things out of you, paying you lots of money for great things. And he became so overwhelmed that he went to somebody, he went to a family member, and I think that family member said, just enjoy the process. Just slow down and enjoy the process. And it's funny because, hindsight 2020, I would just enjoy the process of whatever you're doing. Slow down and enjoy the process. And the magic of storytelling is really great, because it takes our perceptions and puts it on paper of how we see the world. So this is like some sort of demented way that I see the world. But I heard this story, and my teachers, my students are probably going to hear this again. But I heard a story the other day of these cowboys, and they were watching a movie for the first time ever. And they were in a cabin out west, and they were watching a movie, and they brought this rickety-rackety projector in, and it was the first one that they had ever seen. And so they had put a sheet on the wall, tacked it up, and they shut the lights, darkened the area, and so they started the projector up, and it began projecting the motion picture. And the first scene that they saw, these cowboys saw, were these Indians on horseback. And they were coming down over this ridge. And instinctively, one of the cowboys stood up and he emptied his 6-shooter into the wall. And so they turned on the lights frantically. And as they turned on the lights, they started laughing as they saw 6 holes in the sheet. And I think it's funny because it's projection. Everything is projection, how we see everything. They saw their threat, and they reacted upon it. And so with writing, I have just found that I'm writing how I see things. And so to answer your question a long way around, any aspiring people to write, any aspiring authors, is just write how you see the world, how it's projected to you, and let that be beautiful, Anybody else? But thank you again. Yeah.
Now, you're writing kind of like parables, spiritual parables. Do you have a website where people could read and say, talk to you and ask questions?
I don't yet. So I'm still figuring out what I should do. My publisher emailed me a list of 34 different things that I should do, and he said just pick 4 of them, and I've probably picked 2, and this is one of them. So soon I think, and he told me a mailing list and stuff like that. Yeah, no pressure. But and again, I can make advanced reader copies of Debarkation available if anybody is interested in that as well. But yeah, anybody else?
Sorry. What was it like writing? And I know that you offered this to a bunch of different, I don't want to say people groups, because you had a few people, and you had high school students read it prior to publishing it. You had editors look at it. You had different groups of people out there reading it. What was that like for you to put something that was special to you out there for people to make comments about? And
Yeah, it was a little. It gave me a little sort of anxiety actually, because here's this art that I've created, and I stand by it, and I queried several agents before this publisher had picked it up, and again I didn't know what I was doing, so I'm learning via YouTube, which is how we learn anything now, but. It was a little nerve-wracking because I would get letters back saying, well, we want to work with something that's not this. And it's kind of like putting your Mona Lisa out there and saying, here she is. And somebody says, well, I don't like how she's not smiling, or her hair needs to be a different color. But I finally got to the point where I stood by it, and I'm like, you know what, this is my artwork, and I love it. You know, it's my baby, even though I have 4 of them. But this is something that I love, and so. And I did take some of those. Now, some of the suggestions that they made, I did kind of add those into Debarkation, as you know, writing as the main character as a woman. That was interesting. That was interesting. I don't know, ladies. I don't know. That's why. I'm giving some advanced readers copies to some ladies to see. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, it was a really cool process, though. Really great, and so much to learn from. And I can't wait to progressively and perpetually learn. So, yeah. Anybody else? All right. Well, thank you seriously for coming. There are some refreshments back there, and I do have copies for sale. They're $20 with a little sign from me. I could have Logan sign them, but it just wouldn't mean the same thing. So I'd love to sign it for you. But thank you again for coming so much, and I really do hope that you enjoy it. And again, part 2 will be out soon-ish. So as I slow down and hurry up at the same time. So, but thank you for coming. So.